Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast. Boom! What's going on, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And I'm Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
Hey,
Dude.
Thank you all for coming on. There's a bunch of people who have already been in the chat, so we definitely appreciate that. Coming to hang out for this me and Rob session here, which I'm pretty stoked about. I love hanging with Rob. So
Hell yeah.
they're always great.
We got a fun one tonight.
Huh?
We're going to have a fun one tonight.
We are going to have a fun one tonight. So, hey, listen, this time we had some technical difficulties. Jay Muller, who says we're always late.
Yeah. I know.
Shut up, Jay Muller.
This time it wasn't me. I was here at 8:27.
I don't know about that. But
Oh, it's too good. I'm really hoping that you guys can't hear, because right now the room that I'm sitting in, just outside of the door, there's some adult Amazonian milk frogs, and they're in like breeding right now. So they are croaking, and it sounds like wah, wah, wah. And I keep hearing it like casually, and I'm like, is there someone standing outside the door right now? And then I'm like, oh, it's just the frogs. It's the frogs. No big deal.
that is amazing. So here's a kicker, right? So I was just telling Rob a little bit about this. So my phone, I made sure I was barely on my phone today. I knew I was going to go right from the shop to here and then jump on the podcast. So I didn't want to use my phone because I remembered my headphones this week. Well,
Hey,
what happened? But 40 plus.
your headphones are dead.
No, it's my wired headphones. But a 40-plus minute FaceTime happened with Kevin McCurley today, so my phone is very dead. So it is attached to the charger right now. So
That's fair.
you know, it is what it is.
Oh, you got to see some cool ball pythons, though.
I did see some cool ball pythons, although I'm still jealous because he's showing me all that bald stuff, and the saturation never gets picked up on the phone camera ever. So I'm like, I'm using my imagination.
Yep. Yeah, you're gonna have to. Well, on a lot of that stuff, the color saturation just doesn't come in.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
I don't know.
anything that has pink highlights just doesn't show up either.
Yeah. Then I'm mad that Aubrey's going up there.
Yep.
And I told Aubrey to let me know the next time he went up to Nerd. I mean, I'm in Georgia, so it's not like I could have gone this time. Like, hey man, let me know the next time you go up to Nerd, and I'll split the drive with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I didn't even get a message, so better believe I'm going to give Aubrey a bunch of shit. Exactly. But yeah, so okay. So this week's episode is going to be a fun one. We might make a few people mad, but they can deal with it because it's a valid point. Pinky up in here.
That's right, man.
But it's a valid point. We're talking about pricing and inflation of stuff in the industry. And there's a bunch of different points. So as always, guys, feel free to throw your comments in there. I don't know if Rob can see the comments, but I can see the comments. And if anybody, hey, perfect. If anybody is kind and you want a super chat, we'll highlight your super chat. And that may distract us for a momentary lapse of time. As always, you should be following Reptile Talk on Instagram at reptile.talk. And, of course, supporting USARK Florida, and all of that wonderful stuff. And I decided to talk shop for now. But, there's all the business is out of the way. Let's start calling motherfuckers out.
Yeah, motherfucker. No, just kidding. Yeah, this is a topic that I've been wanting to do a show on for a little bit. The guys at Reptile Fight Club did an episode that was on pricing on rare species and whether or not they should be expensive or whether they shouldn't be expensive. And it was a pretty decent episode. I think that some points in there got missed, and then just listening to not just that podcast, but like every reptile podcast, you hear people talk about, oh, well, corn snakes used to be $25 and this, ball pythons used to throw them away and blah, 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 blah. And then now everyone just complains basically. And they're like, oh, everything's so expensive now. Everything's so expensive now. There's no reason a snake should be $5,000. And it's like, well, that's just an opinion, there's people who are saying there should never be $100,000 car, or there should never be a $200,000 car. And then to the people who make those cars, it's like, well, how much craftsmanship and work and time do we put into these cars to make them worth what they're worth? And people are buying them. So at the end of the day, let's say someone puts something up for $2 million and it never sells for $2 million. Guess what? It's probably not worth $2 million. But if people are putting things up for $2 million and they sell in 10 minutes, guess what the current market value is?
Yep, exactly. I just want to give a shout out to Jay Muller for the super chat, just for love. Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you. So pumped. Yeah. So this is just a topic that I've been thinking about for maybe the last couple of weeks, and just kind of thinking on and wanting to do an episode with, and then we throw it at Jeremy, and Jeremy's like, let's fucking do it. Let's do it. So let's do it. I'm pumped.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think, but before we even go into the topic of just the price of certain snakes, there's two I think really important aspects of this. Number one, the industry's always moved in waves, right? Things have become popular, prices have gone up because they've become popular, and then that fad moves along. It's only been exacerbated by social media as the social media trends for certain things pop up. Black kings are a great example. Used to be a $50 snake. I used to be trying to sling them in Barcheck's table in White Plains, and you couldn't move them for $50. Now they're $250, $300, and you can't keep them in stock.
Pretty consistently, yeah.
It's now they're worth that much, but it's because of some social media hype. The other element to this too is, which we're seeing it as far as like raw materials go, rodent food is going through the roof right now. Rodent food prices. And that's causing rat prices to go up. So now if you're trying to sell snakes, it's important to realize that the person who's selling the snake also had to feed the snake. So not only is the value coming from the snake especially if it's genetically involved or whatever, but there's also a little bit wanting to recoup that cost. Even if you're breeding rodents and you're not going out and buying rodents, rodent food literally is going up. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying how rodent food prices jumped up $5 a bag basically overnight, and there's no price break for buying an entire pallet. It's like, nope, here it is. It's $19 per bag, and a pallet is 30 plus bags. I don't know where you're getting it from, and if you were paying $14 a bag, now all of a sudden it's 19 something a bag. That's no small price difference, and you're going to feel that immediately. So if you're selling rodents or selling reptiles that are eating the rodents you had to buy, you have to offset that cost a little bit.
Yeah, and a lot of people will talk about it. Well, and they'll say, "Oh, well, it's fine if you have a business and blah blah blah, and you have employees, and you have to think about all that sort of stuff." But at the end of the day, even if you're just doing this as a hobby, why would you want to put in $10,000 and then only be able to get back $1,000? Like, when you have the possibility and the market can meet the value at getting closer to what you're putting in. Like, why? Like, I get it. This is a passion project for a lot of people. A lot of people don't care particularly about the money, or they say they don't care about the money. But when it comes down to it, when it boils down to it at the end of the day, being able to have some money in your pocket is important no matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you breed one clutch of ball pythons or whether you breed, Eugene Bissett doing 1,500 clutches of ball pythons a year. At the end of the day, it does have to factor in somewhere. It's somewhere. Imagine if you're like, okay, I just want my ball pythons to pay for my rodent bill, and then your rodent bill gets up by 20%, 25% even is what is generally looking at right now. And you're still making that same amount of money from reproducing your snakes. It's like you basically are going to be losing more money.
Yeah.
even if you just wanted to cover the cost of your rodents, now whatever you were planning on selling your snakes for, that value has gone shorter. And that's how it's been over the last 20 years. Your dollar goes less and less and less over the last 20 years. Think about it. The minimum wage really hasn't changed in how many years?
Yeah.
Come on.
No, it's definitely 100% true. And I think anybody who talks about not being in the for money, you know, if you're breeding your animal, you can certainly breed your animal. Love breeding them. Certainly like that experience, you know, whatever. But it's if you're not paying attention financially to what that's doing to you, you're kind of dumb. You know what I mean?
Or money is so far removed from your everyday life that you don't understand people who like the extra 10 grand from their snakes really helps them be able to live.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there has to be some element, you know, like a hobby is something that should be able to that involves sales is something that should be able to essentially pay for itself. You don't want to consistently be coming out of pocket to fund this hobby because at some point it just becomes an expense. And while you might enjoy doing it, you know, it's not really a hobby at that point so much as something you enjoy. You know,
yeah, if you got one snake or you got two snakes, I would consider that like kind of more on the hobby side. If you have got any number more than 10, it's a little more than a hobby, you know, because well, if you have a hobby of a couple snakes, it is not going to potentially take a substantial amount of food off of your own table to feed your collection. If you have got I think I had like a $200 or $300 a month food bill when I was doing things on my own. Like that's a little more than a hobby, or at that point it starts to border that step up away from just being a hobby.
Exactly. I mean, look at it this way. So while I'm down here doing music stuff in Georgia during the day, since music really always happens at night, during the day I'm helping out a friend who's running a pet shop right now, and which is fun for me. But we're selling feeders to people, and a medium rat is like almost $10. Like imagine you've got 10 snakes that need rats once a week, 10 medium rats. That's $100 a week just to feed 10 snakes. That's $400 a month. Like that's ridiculous.
That's more than a hobby price. That's an expense price.
Right, exactly. And the people who are fine with paying for that, cool, man, kudos to you. But at that point, I'm like, I gotta maybe think about buying this in bulk and maybe spending a little more up front so I can deal with that cost in a different way. So it's not taking $100 out of my paycheck every week. You know what I mean? That's an expense. And again, a lot of that's because rodent food has gone up. So wholesale rodent costs have gone up. That all comes back down to the consumer. Whether you're buying 5 rats, 10 rats, 100 rats, like it adds up really quickly.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But it's just that you have to factor those things in when it comes to the cost of an animal, because I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, corn snakes are $15 snakes or $20 snakes. They shouldn't be They shouldn't be $100. They should never be $150. I literally hear people say that all the time, and it's like, okay, what you're talking about as if it's a coffee mug, and you're going, okay, the coffee mug should never be more than $20. This is a coffee mug. But what you're actually talking about is a snake's life that you are selling to someone else who is going to raise and hopefully take care of that snake. And when you have a $10 or $15 or $20 price tag on an animal, a lot of people look at it as disposable, especially, families, people who are not tied into the hobby. Like, we don't want our snakes to be disposable. We want people to actually value them, because if people go, oh, I got a turtle for $20, and then, a month later, they're like, wow, this thing's a lot of work. They go, oh, $20 that I've invested into this thing, I'm going to chuck it outside, because $20 they can see, okay, that's a meal at McDonald's for me and my kid. They're not looking at it as, I've got this animal's life that I'm supposed to be fostering and taking care of, and it's an investment of time, space, money, all these different things. I think that really starts, like minimum starts at $100, where people start to go, hey, maybe I should think about this a little bit more than just getting it on an impulse and then dealing with it later. There's some people who will buy things on impulse at $100, which is like, if that's what they do, that's what they do.
Right.
But at that $100 or $200 price point, most people are going, hey, what does it take to take care of this thing? What do I have to get to make sure it's happy? I do want to invest my time and my money and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera into it. And so, the fact that corn snakes were ever, I don't want to say ever, because like maybe in the 70s and 80s, if you bred corn snakes, $15 went a long way, but or a lot longer, a lot further than it does now. But like $15 today, like I can go to McDonald's and spend $15 right now and then
Easy.
eat it and then it's gone. Like that's it. And then to think that people are going to put the same amount of value or more value in a animal that they bought for $15 is just ridiculous. It's not being real. It's not looking at the hobby as what it is, because things have changed. Things have changed drastically in the hobby. People are able to get thermostats. Thermostats are $100, and some people look at thermostat and they go, $100. I only bought the snake for $50. Blah, 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 blah. But if they are already spending $200 on the snake, they're going, okay, $100 into that cost to make sure that my animal's healthy and happy. It all adds up. It all adds up. And the Mexican black king snakes are a good example of that, where they used to be $50. Should they have ever been $50? Probably not. They're a cool snake. I mean, yeah, they're a little overhyped because of social media, but people want them. Mm-hmm. That $200 to $300 price point is where the market's at for. You post them, they sell. So it's not like people are posting them for $500 and they're just sitting there and we're all going, wow, look at these idiots selling them for $500. No, they sell. They sell it $200 to $300 consistently, and you can't really argue with that. Like, people can be upset. Oh man, well I wanted to get them when they were $50, but now I don't really want to invest $200. But you're thinking now more about that value of that animal's life, and think about, oh, I'll get it later. Oh, I'll get it later. Oh, I'll get it later. You should get it when you want it, or when you're ready for it, and because the market can change. The market can change. Honestly, I don't see anyone currently in the U.S. producing enough Mexican black king snakes to be like, damn, I'm not able to sell them at $200. Maybe we need to adjust the price down a little bit. It's not happening. It's just not. You go on Morph Market, you see them for $200, they're gone.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about the market? It tells you that it's at its kind of equilibrium right now. And will supply go down over the pandemic? That's not what we've seen. We have seen the demand go up, and supply not able to meet the demand for almost everything across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably one of the most solid points, for all is we're talking about a living creature, and to say that animal's life is worth the same as a Big Mac, and large fries. Like, you don't think that that's now disposable, then
to most people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, $15, $20, whatever. It's easy. I think about it from the other side of my life, from a music standpoint. Like, if I've got to tell somebody, hey, the cost to get into this gig is $20, they don't really think about that. They're like, oh yeah, I got 20 right here. Here you go. But as soon as they got to start digging for money and counting money, it makes them think like, oh man, this is a lot of money. That's notable. Because I got to count it out. That switch going off is sometimes that exactly what that person needs to realize. Hey, maybe this is the right thing. You know what? Maybe it's not. Like the axolotl craze.
Mm-hmm.
Like, big time. Axolotls are like super cheap, but they're not necessarily the easiest thing to maintain. They don't want super warm. stuff. So if you want to properly maintain an axolotl, that it takes a bit of an investment. But you know, they get hyped up, and then they're like, "Oh, it's only $30 or whatever." That's nothing. You know, look at this cool water salamander. You know, this thing's awesome. You know, and then it usually ends up spelling doom. You know, for that animal. Because it's like, yeah, here it is. Here's a tank, water in it. Here you go. You know, and that's what most people get given instead of like the full walkthrough of like, hey, depending on your ambient temperatures, you might need a chiller in there. And that, you know.
And if you're doing it as, you know, purely just like a hobby, because the hobby has so many different levels, but like if you're doing it as just like, you know, I have a couple reptiles, I have a couple things that I'm interested in, I just want to do this, you know, you might be put off by like a $200 price tag on things. But honestly, think about how much time you're supposed to have the animal for, and then break that down to a daily or a monthly cost. Because like I see, well, one of the things that I see when I have people here for tours at Nerd is that we'll talk about a ball python. I'll be like, oh, this one's like $200. This one's, you know, $1,000. This one's $5,000. And they go, oh my goodness, $5,000. I can't even imagine. I'm like, yeah, but you know, it's going to live 20 years or more. You know, if you are in the business of breeding it, after the first 2 or 3 years, you'll be able to reproduce it, you know, sell each one of those babies for X amount of money. And then just think about even just on a timeline, like when people buy a cat or a dog, or they get a cat or a dog, like purebred cats and dogs can be anywhere from like a couple $100 up to a couple $1,000. Like purebred, I don't even know. I don't really follow dogs that much, but I know that there are some dog breeds that are like, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, and people are willing to put that in for what, an 8-year lifespan or 10-year lifespan on a dog. But you talk about having a corn snake for 20 years and $200 is too much, or $150 is too much.
Yep.
I think that people have just looked at reptiles as being disposable for so long that it's hard for them to put an actual value on them, because, you know, when it was just like guys, you know, breeding snakes and trading snakes back and forth, or I don't want to say guys, but people trading snakes back and forth. You know, you breed a couple things here. Oh, I like what you got. Let me trade with you. It's no big deal. But this industry is past that. It's not. I mean, there are little niches of that where you see stuff like that happening, but as a whole, this industry is so much larger than a couple people breeding some reptiles and trading ones that they think are cool. It is so much past that. And there's so much more of our society that values them now, that it is what it is, you know. And you know, there are certain things, like one thing that I think is like personally way overrated, but the market is sustainable on it, is white-lip pythons. White-lip pythons went from being like a $200 python, and most people were like, not really super into white-lip pythons. They'll be like, it's cool, but like I'm not super interested. They bite, blah, blah, blah. To now, northern white-lip, the gold white-lip pythons, if you can get captive bred babies, they're like $600 to $1,000 roughly. And then the southern white-lip pythons, the black ones, $2,000, $3,000, but the market sustains it. People want them. And people are willing to pay those prices. Again, if it was people putting up $600 white-lip pythons and them just sitting there for months, okay, maybe that's not the market value. But currently, the people who want them are very willing to shell out $600 to $1,000 for a white-lip python in order to get one. And a lot of those people are not even like, I don't want to say they're not qualified, but they're not tuned in enough to breed them, to be able to reproduce them. So you know,
the Bismarck ring pythons, dude. I mean, you know, $100 back in the day, that was basically the same thing. Like, nobody wanted to deal with them because they were mean, they bit, they pissed, they did all that stuff. They fell off the face of the earth, and now suddenly a couple guys are breeding them. And, you know, they're like, oh, well, I don't know. Let's throw $1,500 on there and see what happens. And they all sell out.
Yep.
Shit. You know, so if people are paying that price, then, yeah, man, I mean, that's the value. That's the value of the animal. Rarity plays some role for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously that effort, I think one of the things that people forget a lot of times when they try to get into the industry is they look at the immediate number of like, oh man, this snake costs $2,000. I want to breed that and make my own $2,000 snake. I'll make so much money. And it's like, okay, there's a possibility for that, but there's a whole behind the scenes, like 90% of the hobby that's not involved only sees the tip of the iceberg, that top 10%. They don't see what underneath, and what it takes. And then it's
bedding you had to buy, all the time you had to put into it, all the rats you had to feed it to grow it up, you're learning, the experience, the amount of time you're putting into learning how to breed these different species. And, it's not cheap. I hate to say it, but it's not cheap. If you're good at something, why do it for free? And don't get me wrong, here's the deal. I think that there will always be room in the hobby for, gifting people snakes, or see someone who's passionate about getting into something, and then you've got the ability to give someone a snake or trade a snake or do something like that. I'm not saying that people should never do that, but I think that reptiles are criminally undervalued, and I still hear people saying they should never be that expensive or they should never be that price. And it's like, well, that's an opinion. And my opinion is different than that. And it's just an opinion is what it is. But my opinion is, like, why shouldn't we put value into these animals? Like, I work with Borneos, and like Borneos have been criminally undervalued, and blood pythons criminally undervalued. You see the people who are breeding these neon red blood pythons, like Kara and like some of the other people who are doing blood pythons. And it's like, do you know how many years of selective breeding and raising and going, well, I held this one back, but it doesn't quite have the color that I want, but its brother definitely does. So I want to selectively, choose for making these animals that are very specific looking, the amount of time, effort, money, bedding, food, blood, sweat, and tears that goes into doing that. For you to tell someone, why is this a $500 blood python? It's like, because you're not paying just for this snake. You're paying for all of the time and effort and, all the things that lead up to making this one baby snake. Because it's not just, I found a snake on Craigslist. I found another snake on Craigslist. I bred them together because I got them for $50 each. And now I'm going to charge $10,000 for things. And granted, there are some people who try and do stuff like that, but it's not most of the people who are in the reptile hobby right now. Like, at least not from what I'm seeing. A lot of the people, maybe I'm just plugged into different circles, and I'm not plugged into like the rescue side of things. But most of the people I see who are breeding snakes and being successful at it have put intentionality, time, money, blood, sweat, tears, and all of that into it to make it more, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jay Muller,
I want to give another shout out to Jay Muller for the super sticker.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
I'm gonna jump into the comment section just because I saw something happen. I'm gonna disagree something here, saying that bloods are more intelligent than carcasses. I'm gonna disagree.
I think they are.
I'm gonna disagree. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that either, but hey, I mean, bloods are smart. I think they're honestly right around the same. I think they're right around the same, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm like, listen, I love the meat missiles just as much as the next guy, but but I think that's another. Bloods are another really great. Short-tails too are another great thing that we're seeing the value increase in, very, very quickly, for a species that was otherwise, you get a normal blood python for $60, and there are still those that come in, for those cheap prices, as either cheap imports or just the ugly normal bloods that are all gross and brown. But, seeing people like Kara and so many others that have put in that time and dedication to produce solid, like really healthy hardy animals that also end up looking like these badass creations. Like when they say like you're paying for the brand or whatever, like you're also paying for all that dedication came. If you're watching the video, I got to do it better. All that time that happened before. But you know, I mean, there is that level. You know, I'll go back to talking about like the ball pythons that are like thousands and thousands of dollars, where people are like, I can't imagine spending that much on a snake or whatever. Or ball python shouldn't be that much money. And how many times have we seen over the years, Rob, where people, you know, invest in a project, they invest a lot of money in a project, and then within 2 years or even a year or less, the prices tank, and they get pissed and try to blacklist people because they're like, hey, screwed me out of all this money and blah, blah, blah. The thing that thing to realize is like, look, if you make a $10,000 investment and that snake the next year is selling for, or I should say, by the time you're ready to breed it, not the next year. So let's say you buy a baby ball python in 2 years, you buy a male. So 2 years, it's more than ready to breed, and they're probably going to be around $7,500. First of all, $7,500 is a substantial number if you're able to produce more of that. But also, you have one snake you spent $7,500 on. If that is a male and you breed it to multiple females, and it's a higher dollar animal that's going to give you higher dollar animals, you mean to tell me you can't invest 10 grand and make 10 grand back while producing multiple high value snakes? You know what I mean? So like, just because the initial price is now less, you know, it's not like you bought a snake for 10 grand for 2 years for $100. You know, if that was the case, I could see being upset. You know,
I don't want to. There's a couple snakes that happened to: ivory blood pythons, blood pythons, petite blood pythons, teen-egg blood pythons. They literally went from like $3,000 one year to like $500 the next year. And I've heard some theories on how that happened, but I don't want to speak on anything that I don't know for 100%. So. But there were some things going on behind the scenes where literally a lot of people invested a lot of money, and then the next year the project's worth 1/10 of what a lot of people bought in for.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen often, honestly.
Doesn't, but that's a level of like understanding the market and how pricing works and how the market works. You know, I mean, I said this before. There's a lot of people that get into the snake breeding business and that are terrible business people. They might be great with the animals, but they're terrible business people. They don't understand how it works. You know, and it is what it is. You know, we're not all made to be business owners and whatever. But when you start then sticking your nose out, saying stuff like that, it just shows like you don't really understand business, you know, and how to get a proper ROI on something, you know. So that people just need to understand that. And again, like we've already talked about, the cost of rodent feed, the cost of rodents, the cost of your time, the cost of your investment to start the project, you know, that all has to be taken into account when you're A, pricing your animal, but B, looking at like, okay, well, what if you were to look at this as any other business, you know, and break all of the expenses, your electricity, your time, if you were to pay yourself, you know, like all these different things that goes into that, you know. And if you're using, you know, again, 1 or 2 clutches of snake because it's a little different. But when you start getting a substantial collection and you're like, oh man, you know, this is taking a bit of my time, you know, like it's some stuff you got to think about. And you know, I mean, it is what it is. I see Justin shot back with stuff on bloods and stuff, and I mean that's great that some people think they're retics, but retics are, you know, not always that smart. And you know, I know, dude, trust me, I keep bloods and short tails. I know they pay attention. Carpets do too, man. They're just a little more reactive. But I mean, to each their own. I'll leave it at that. you're gonna get into an argument like, well, this person says this, and I think this, and blah 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 blah, and it's cool, man. Whatever. This reptiles in general are smarter than we give them credit for, and how you
For
interact,
real.
you do with them directly dictates how they're going to react to you, and how you maintain and deal with your animals in your collection when it's different from somebody else's, and you approach it the same way. It doesn't always give you the same result. But I'll leave it at that because I love Justin. I'm not here for it, but
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think it's just important that the people. I think there's just a lot of people who are saying things that don't really understand the bigger picture, and we see that a lot, especially now with social media. As old as it makes us seem, bitching about social media, but we see that where like people just throw themselves all into it and bitch when things don't go their way, and like, dude, it doesn't have to be that way, but you have to get creative. Like, I love picking fun at ball python guys because they breed stuff. They follow some other breeder really intently, whoever it is. I'll use Kabelka as an example because he is one of the leaders in ball pythons right now. They jump on a project and they get the lowest end thing they can related to that project. And then by the time they've become successful at it, the project it might still be worth a little bit of money, but not
what it was before. Yeah.
It was before. And then they get frustrated. And it's like, well, listen, if you want to actually really do something, you have to understand what that investment looks like. Like, somebody just did the work. They put in that time investment. They put in that money investment. You have an option, as a potential business or potential investor in a project that you think looks really cool and you want to try to produce, but B, if you're trying to make a little bit of side income, you have to pay attention. Like, okay, do I want to get a spot nose het clown and a leopard het clown, try to make a Batman and spend $700, or do I want to get a spot nose leopard 100% het clown and spend $1,000 right up front on that one snake, raise it up, and then get my hands on a visual clown or maybe a visual leopard clown, spend $700 to $1,000, and then increase my chances of producing some badass snakes, therefore seeing my investment back quicker, number one, and producing other stuff you can hold back and create more things from. It's just that thought process and methodology oftentimes gets blocked off by, like, has dropped X amount of money, number one, and a falsified hope of, well, if I do this, it's 1 in 4. It's like, surprise, buddy, genetics is not always perfect, and ball pythons will screw you just as much as Borneos.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. I think that one of the two ones that I've seen, I've seen probably four species of the ones that I see people complain about most. And we already touched on the Mexican black king snakes, which, like, come on, they never should have been a $50 snake.
No,
I don't think they should have ever been a $50 snake. The amount of time and money and effort and rack space and all this. You got to clean colubrids twice as much as you clean ball pythons, so you're putting in more time. They should have been valued more. The Mexican black king snakes, white lip pythons are two that, like, everyone talks about. Number 3 is the Dumerals boas, which, like,
somebody brought that up in the comments earlier, which is it's a really good one.
And you know what, it kind of is what it is. Like, Dumerals boas went up to, like, I think $800 or something, $700-800, and they were still selling at $700-800, and then everyone was saying, oh, they should only be $300. It's like, why should they only be valued at $300? I want a solid reason for someone to say why they should only be $300 as opposed to being $600. And, like, sure, maybe $1,000 is too high, but if it is too high, then the market will correct for that, and no one will buy those $1,000 ones. And the people who've got $1,000 ones are either going to keep them all back and raise them and breed them, or they're going to have to adjust their pricing to move them and move them down to a fair market value. And come on, like, I don't understand why anyone gets mad about stuff like that. Like, I literally don't, because if something is selling at $600 and people are going, oh, I hate that sells for $600. Usually what that means to me is people can't afford it.
Yep.
Like, and like, that's not the seller's problem, because I constantly have people who message Nerd and they're like, why is this rare ball python combo $5,000? And we're like, well, it's taken us 20 years to make it. And they're like, well, will you take $100? No, we won't. We put 20 years of work into producing this snake, and then you want to value it at, I've only got $100. Buy a $100 snake. Be happy with your $100 snake. Like, the thing is, it's like with any artist, really. My work is valued more because of the time and effort and, you know, everything that I put into it. It's not free for me to do it. I still have to pay bills. I still have to pay my rent. I still have to pay my electricity. I still have to pay my car payment. Like,
yep,
it's not free. We're not, like, nobody in the world, well, I shouldn't say it, nobody in the United States is living for free. Just is not happening. Yeah. Or if they are, there's some exchange there going on, okay? No matter what it is, there's some exchange that's going on, okay? Don't look at me like that. You know what I'm talking about. There's some sort of exchange going on, okay?
I'm just saying what happens.
I'm just saying.
Stays behind the gas station.
But I can't understand someone saying, hey, people want to buy this thing at $600, and lots of people do, and they're selling for $600, they shouldn't be $600. Like, imagine if you went into the grocery store and you saw a really nice steak and the butcher carved it up extra nice, and it's this premium cut that was from grass-fed beef, and you go, I don't think that you should charge $50 for this steak. What? No. You don't get to dictate what the person values it at. And if it doesn't sell for $50, then the butcher's got to adjust what they're doing. And if it isn't worth it for the butcher to get that specific cut of meat, to raise that specific cattle, to do it the way that they're doing it, then it won't exist. It won't happen.
Yeah.
It just won't. If people are breeding Dumeril's boas, they're selling for $200. I'm putting $500 to $700 of food into my adults every year. It is not worth it for me to breed them. They'll either sell them and get rid of them, or they won't breed them. And then what does that create? Creates less supply. And then if the demand goes up and it meets an area where it's worth it for people to breed them, then they'll breed them. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I've not heard one good reason other than I don't think they should be for things to be cheaper.
Yeah, or I love the like, oh, they're just money hungry, and it's like, no, man, like you have to exactly like what you were saying. You know, there's a whole history of that person. You know, even if it's a newer breeder that's trying to maybe get top dog for a project they invested money on, there's a level of that, that's still happening that goes behind it. Again, like we only see the tip of the iceberg. When you see the Morph Market post, you're seeing the finished product from somebody actually doing the job of maybe raising those animals, or even if they got adults, establishing those animals in their collection, then breeding them, making sure that female's maintained properly to lay a fertile clutch, then incubating, then getting that animal started. Like there is still some level of effort, and we oftentimes that doesn't get recognized enough. Yeah. And it's not easy to do what we do. You know what I mean? Like, and certain species are obviously easier to breed than others, and that challenge is far less for certain species. But, like that's part, and a lot of times they're less expensive because they are easier to breed. But that's one of those fair market things where it's like, hey, look, I don't think a corn snake should be valued at $15 or $20, but I do understand they're super easy to breed. So maybe like $50, $50 maybe is the base price that they should be, because there is some effort that has to go into breeding them, regardless of how easy they are to breed. In comparison to like Justin brought up Bolin's python breeding, and
That was going to be the fourth one that I brought up was Bolin's pythons, and
yeah.
Bolin's pythons selling for $7,000 to $10,000, and everyone being up in arms about it. And I don't like the people who are tuned into Bolin's pythons know this. There have been captive breedings of Bolin's pythons recently from people who bought captive bred or captive born. Sorry, everyone who's going to get butthurt right now. Captive born baby Bolin's pythons. I know personally that one of the customers who bought babies from Nerd 3 years ago produced babies this year. So what does that say? And absolutely, Bolin's pythons are rare. More people should have them in their hands so that they can produce more of them. But someone who's investing $10,000 or $20,000 in a breeding project for something like Bolin's pythons is going to be very serious about breeding them. The person who's buying the one-off male, maybe not. But if they've got 10 grand to drop on a male, why do you care? Like, it's not like there's only one male in the United States. The people who are in the Bolin's python groups and the people who have got Bolin's pythons and are doing the registry and all that sort of stuff, they know where they all are. It's not that there's only one left, and most of those people are collaborating together to try and make more Bolin's pythons. I'm thinking forward to if/when the oh my goodness, I'm totally blanking on the species name. And Peli pythons. If/when those come to the United States, I'm willing to bet they're not going to be a $100 snake or a $1,000 snake or a $2,000 snake. And I would like some. Do I want to pay $5,000 for them? No. Is there somebody who's probably going to want to pay $5,000 to $10,000 for them? Absolutely. If they want to make that investment of time and money and effort, why shouldn't they? That doesn't mean, I can get on the podcast and be like, wow, did you see the Owen Peli pythons are fucking $10,000 for a pair? Yeah, I can say that. Does it mean that I'm taking into consideration that they had to get here from Australia, probably through Europe, probably through smuggle, through this, all these different venues? That's like when you're talking about the $60 blood pythons. Why are blood pythons $60? You know why? Because the people over in Southeast Asia who are farming them use them for skins. So they kill them. So they're worth $20 to them or $10 to them. They're not really worth a whole lot to them. But they still have to they have to go to a farm. They have to be at the farm for a little bit. They have to be flown from that farm in Southeast Asia to the United States, where they're going to hit a distributor who's going to distribute them to someplace else. And all of that costs money. All of it costs money is what it boils down to. And think about the cost of flying from Southeast Asia to the United States. It's not cheap. Like, it all adds up. All these little tiny pieces add up. And the Bolin's pythons are one where, everyone's upset about the price, but they sell for that price. So like, market, that's where the market's at right now. Should the market be at that? I don't know. The market's telling me that it is. I really don't even go on Morph Market right now because I'm really trying not to spend money. But I've heard that there's some males like randomly that'll be sitting on Morph Market for a couple months and they're sitting at $10,000 or whatever. Then that's not what the market's at right now. If the market's at $7,000, then that's what the market's at. Do I think that there are people who are capable of breeding them who don't have that $14,000 or $20,000 to invest in them? Probably. But are there people who've got 20 grand who are going to figure it out? We've already proven that there are. Someone already did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone already did it. So at the end of the day, that's where it's at. And for anyone to sit here and say that we should not put more value on these animals, I just don't understand it. Like,
Doesn't make any
if
sense.
every snake was $10,000, sure, yeah, okay, we've all gone crazy. Hardly anyone has got $10,000 of disposable income. But at that point, everyone's going to hold back all their snakes. Nobody's going to be able to sell them, and nobody's making any money. Right now, the market is growing over COVID. I can't tell you how many people have come to the shop and said, "Oh, when the pandemic shut everything down, we hopped on YouTube and we really got invested in animals. We really got interested in keeping snakes. We didn't have any snakes, and then now we got 10 snakes, or we didn't have any snakes, and now we have 3 snakes, and we really want to get a couple more, and we're really interested in seeing this species or that species, or this more for that more, for getting to hold a scaleless ball python for the first time, or seeing a Boland's python in person, or seeing a palmetto corn snake in person. All these little things all work in confluence, or they all work together to create this hobby, this industry, this larger picture than what I got going on in my reptile room, and if I'm selling Borneo short-tailed pythons at $1,000 and someone comes and tells me they shouldn't be $1,000, it's like, why? What is it hurting you that I'm putting them up for $1,000? Personally, is it hurting you? Wait, it's so crazy to me when people who are working with that species say that it shouldn't be that much, and it's like, oh, so you don't want people to value your animals more. What sense does that make? Like, what sense does that make? What other people charge for their animals does not have to dictate what you charge for your animals. If you think that your snake's only worth $200, sell for $200. Sell for $200. If I breed Borneos and I think, oh, it's only worth $100, it's only worth $50, and I sell them and they all go at $50, guess what? That's what they were worth to me. But I don't. I think they're worth more than that, personally.
Yeah.
I've been keeping Borneo short-tailed pythons for 15 years. And some of the stuff that I've been raising up has been 8 years in the making. And I've got more stuff that's been more years in the making that's coming up. And that's like, what I think about is like my scrub pythons. If I ever breed scrub pythons, like the amount of time and effort that I've put into getting scrub pythons and raising them how I think is right, and taking my time with them and doing all this different stuff. If I wanted to charge $2,000 or $1,500 for a scrub python, that's what I think they're worth. And if nobody buys them, I don't care. I really don't. Like Stephen Cush has got a bunch of really nice baby scrub pythons that he produced. If he charges $1,500 a baby for those, and that's what he feels like they're worth, that's what they're worth, man. Yeah. Like I hate to say it, but like, how many other captive bred baby barneck scrub pythons are you going to get? I'll wait. I'll wait.
Yeah, exactly, and that's literally like the biggest point. It's people are super narrow-minded to these points as far as the pricing on certain animals, or they literally just don't they don't understand, or they just can't afford. And as you were saying, it's just, and they're just like, well, it shouldn't be that money. It's like, well, why? Because you want to get one. You save your pennies, bro. Like the rest.
Or breed your snakes and then use that snake money to buy one of the cool things that you want, man. That's what I'm trying to do.
It's funny. This isn't a super chat, but I'm highlighting this because I think it's funny. From Amy, literally looking at Justin Belka's stock on Morph Market while I listen to you guys. Got a dream. I mean, like, but also, yes, and Justin's got some great stuff, and like I'll comment on his Instagram posts, and I'll shoot him texts every once in a while, and just be like, dude, just like, wow, I don't even know what to say about those animals. Like, that's crazy, and he's somebody that when he talks about his breeding projects and what he's trying to do, like, you can see the amount of mental investment that he's made in every single one of his projects, where it's like, yeah, when he says that snake is $8,000 or $8,500, you don't really question it, because you're just like, yeah, I know you've been meticulously studying these phenotypes, and with the exact intention of putting them together for whatever. and that's really obvious. So nobody ever really argues with that. So it's always so bizarre when you get the people who are like, oh, it just shouldn't be that much money. It's like, dude, you just don't understand what's going into the process. You are, again, missing the process.
Even some of the people I see who do the process and they put all this money into it and they still think that it should be valued less. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. You'd think that, oh, I'm putting, $1,000 worth of food into my snakes every year. I only want to get $900 back. That, like, or I want to get less money for my animals. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. Like when it comes to people who do know the process, especially on a larger scale, and you start looking at expenses, if you're not aware of that, and then how much money is coming in, like, again, you don't want to be losing money. Even if you love doing this, you don't want to necessarily be losing money. Especially literally the cost of everything is going up. Like, dude, what was it? Just a couple months ago, an 8x4 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood in New Hampshire was $100. $100 for an 8x4 by 3/4 inch sheet of plywood. Like, what? $100. People who home improvements were quoted one price, and then a couple months later being told, hey, look, I know I quoted you X amount, but the cost of raw materials is literally almost over, doubled in price. So now it's going to be, $12,500, $1,000 to get this project done. What? But people might bitch about that, but nobody's out there like, it should be worth that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, that's what it is right now, because we're all screwed.
Yeah. And like, that's one of the things that I look at on like a larger scale. You talk about back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they had like penny candy, where it's like, oh, you can get a little piece of candy for a penny. And it's like, do you know how much, like, even just talk about sugar and plastic that goes into making, and flavoring that goes into making a piece of candy? It's not a penny, dude. It's not. It just isn't. And everything is just increased in price, from food to materials to PVC. Like, the people who are building racks and enclosures and stuff right now can't even get PVC to make the racks and the enclosures that they want to build.
Yeah.
It all just is cost more. It just is the way that life goes. It's just how it breaks down. And, we can sit here and argue about it all day and be upset about it. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, you can't go up to someone who'd made an 8-foot enclosure and be like, you're charging too much for this 8-foot enclosure. They put time and money. They had to buy materials. They had to do all this different stuff. That's what it's worth to them for their time to do it. That's what it's worth.
Yeah, and a lot of times, especially people who are building stuff with PVC right now, like, they're not even doing the typical retail double the price of your raw materials. Some of them are only
just barely making money on it.
If it costs them $400 to build the cage, they're charging $450.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like, oh man, this enclosure is really expensive, and it's like, well, it cost them $400 to that $450. They're not going to give you the cage at cost. But
and then all the messed up cages that they did to design the right type of enclosure to get the one that you ended up getting. And
yep, exactly. I mean, like, think about, dude, the price of glass. The price of glass, dude. Remember when Dan was talking about how he broke that table in his living room, and for like the third time or whatever? But the last few times replacement, it was only like $50 for the whole glass, and now it was like $170 something.
Jeez.
For the same pane of glass. I don't know why he's broken it so many times, but the same pane of glass, that's crazy. If you're talking about a cage builder that's building cages with sliding glass doors, that cage, the PVC might have cost them $200, but then the glass is going to cost another maybe $250, depending on how big the enclosure it is. So now that's, if you've got to spend now $500 on a cage, Sorry, dude. You're spending $500 on a cage, and then you're also going to wait a long time.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I got out most of the topics that I wanted to talk about on this, but
yes,
one of the things that that I know that we're running close on time here, but I need to rant. I need to rant more. Hold on.
Please.
One of the things that is like the other side of the coin on this is when prices go up like stupid high, like on the Bolin's pythons, like on California red-sided garter snakes, or that sort of thing. Because California red-sided garter snakes usually be $200, and then most recently I've seen them anywhere from $500 to $800 a piece on Market, and just consistent. Like they up there for that, they sell for that. That's what they're going for. Yep. This is not a closed system. We are not currently working on a closed system. This is an open circuit system. And when the only reason I've seen that people can really say, oh, we shouldn't be charging to this much for this type of thing, is that it creates incentive for black market sales on some of these animals. And it can put strain on wild populations, because someone sees online, oh, red-sided garter snakes are $700. If I go collect a whole bunch of them, I can make a $10, $20, $40, $50,000 a year thing, and they just illegally collect them, illegally sell them, and that happens. And so when people talk about, oh, they should never be this price, this imaginary price that I made up is too high, that's the only time that I really agree with people is on some of those like really rare protected species, stuff that is potentially threatened in the wild, and the price incentive creates this black market desire for these animals, because there is, like I was talking about the Owen Peli pythons. People want Owen Peli in the U.S. a lot. Yeah. And there's probably a lot of money that could be tied up in getting some over here. So you better believe that there's some people who are working on getting some out of Australia into Europe to eventually get to the United States. Like how they did rough scale pythons. The desire for rough scale pythons was incredible, incredibly huge.
Yep.
Where do they go? Right to Europe. Breed them a couple times in Europe. Boom. Right over into the United States. And, it's harder for people to get stuff from Australia to the United States. But I think about the California red-sided garter snakes all the time, and I'm like, people kind of have a point with maybe they shouldn't be that expensive with those, because potentially it could cause an unnecessary black market strain on those wild populations of those snakes, because it's someplace where someone can drive and go collect them. Yeah. Not saying you'll be able to find all of them, but it does give people that incentive to go out at the end of the season, collect gravid females, have them have all their babies in a captive setting, toss your females out if you're ethical, or sell them if you're not ethical. Honestly, collecting these protected species is not really ethical in the first place. But what's stopping someone from collecting a gravid female, having those babies, selling each one of those babies for $500, making your 20 grand, whatever, or I'd say 15 grand, probably 30 babies in a litter. They'll make your 15 grand and then do it again next year. And that, when people see, oh, they're selling for $500 to $800 an animal, or the Bolin's pythons, they're selling for $10,000 an animal, it creates this, we're not in the closed system anymore. People online can see prices on everything. So people in Indo can see what people in the United States are paying for Bolin's pythons, or for southern white-lipped pythons, or for any of this stuff. So in that regard, on that other side of the coin, if people really want to argue about why things shouldn't be expensive, that's one of the only arguments I see that could have some validity that I've thought about. I mean, maybe if you are listening to this podcast right now and you're saying, oh, you're not thinking about this thing, please message it to me at Rob is Creeping It Real on Instagram, or you can hit me up on Snapchat. I think it's a.minatrix on Snapchat. Message me on either of those places. Tell me that I forgot something, because that's one of the only situations where I can see people like having a justification for saying, hey, we really shouldn't charge this really high price for this animal, because it's going to create a black market need, and these animals are already strained in the wild where they come from. Right. Because if I'm selling a Borneo short-tailed python for $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, first off, people are not able to collect the stuff that I'm producing. That's besides the point. But the wild population of Borneos is not endangered. I mean, palm oil and deforestation and all that sort of stuff, but it is not considered endangered like Boland's pythons or like California red-sided garter snakes or San Francisco garter snakes or, name another species, Galapagos tortoises or, even aldabras. So that's the only argument I could really, really get behind for why things shouldn't be more expensive.
Yeah.
To the point of market value, because like I said, people are still buying Boland's pythons at $7,000 each. So technically that's where the market's at for them. Is that good? Is it bad? Who am I to say? I'm not buying them, so I don't really care. That doesn't really matter to me. There's a lot of people who've got Boland's pythons now who are trying to breed them, so I hope that they're good. I hope they're successful.
Yeah.
But hey, shout out to, we got like 30, we've been up to like 32 people in the live chat on YouTube, which is pretty freaking cool. I'm down with that.
Highest number I saw, which is awesome.
Boom. I have not been watching the number. I've just been like kind of glancing down every couple of minutes and just like looking to see if there's new comments or whatever. That's cool. So if you're listening to this on the audio, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on Google Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, you are catching it late, you could be watching us live on YouTube and seeing some video of me ranting and spitting all over my camera and getting all worked up, and then Jeremy sitting back and enjoying the show.
Yeah, but I will also say too, if you're here hanging out with us on YouTube, then you'll catch this before anybody else will. So you're going to get a triple dose of reptile talk this week here on YouTube. So obviously this episode is happening right now. This will be the first one to go out on the audio only download option. Tomorrow we're talking with Jacob Bratz.
Hey.
At work. Super excited to talk with Jacob. Great kid. And then Friday, we're talking with John and Dragna from Sim Container.
Woo!
So if you're checking us out on YouTube, the dogs are barking. If you're checking us out on YouTube, you now know that you get a triple threat of reptile talk this week.
And if you're not watching us on YouTube, you can catch it as over the next 3 weeks. We'll be releasing those episodes on all other platforms to check us out.
Bam.
Boom.
Bam.
So Jeremy, as we're winding down our time, what in the realm of reptiles has got you excited about reptiles right now?
So you know what? I'll say this. This is a little selfish for me, but so as I said earlier, down in Georgia a lot right now. Got some music that's happening in Atlanta, which is great. So during the day, I'm helping out a friend at her pet shop. She's getting ready to expand really soon. So I've come on as a consultant in that process. So I've had a really fun time redoing a bunch of enclosures in the shop. So I'm like building out bioactive enclosures, just really cool display enclosures, and I keep most of my stuff in racks personally. So it's just really fun building these enclosures, seeing the animals use those enclosures. I like that. It takes me back to when I used to keep dart frogs and different gecko species and stuff back in the day. So I'm really enjoying that right now.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So Rob, how about you? What's got you excited about reptiles besides price points and stuff?
Honestly, this is something this is an episode that I've had on my mind for like 2 months now, and I'm just like, vent it all out, get it all out there. But so I got two things that I think are pretty exciting right now. One thing is that I finally have some Borneos that have eaten 5 meals, so I feel comfortable selling them so they can go on to their new homes. I still have a few that have not eaten, so I'm going to be probably doing some swapping around, experimenting a little bit to see if I can get them on something different before I assist feed them. So I'll have a couple snakes. I just made sure that my morph market was updated last night. So I'll probably go on tonight or tomorrow or sometime this week, and just put on the babies that are ready to go so that they can go up there. So really cool stuff. And then the other thing is something that's not me at all, but Mike Vesio, I think he goes by Viper Breeder on Instagram. He produced I think they're called Israeli spider tail vipers.
Ooh.
But he posted a picture of a bunch of baby spider tail vipers the other day, and I was like, oh, damn, that's freaking cool. That's so awesome. Yeah, I thought that was freaking really cool. And then there was another person who produced Halmahera scrub pythons this year. Freaking awesome. And then shout out to Chuck Poland, who's producing the Halmaheras, dude. That's another one. If Halmahera scrub pythons, capture bred Halmahera scrub pythons are $3,000 each.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's what they go for. Yeah, that's the amount of time and effort, and all the people who have tried and failed. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that much. Come on.
Not
Okay.
at all. Hey, we had the official wrap up. Our buddy Weed Wars is here. Haven't seen Weed Wars in a while from the nerd live streams and everything way back. Wants to know, Rob, what's Rob's morph market if people want to see some Borneos and stuff?
Everything I do on the internet is under Rob is Creeping It Real. So it's under Rob is Creeping It Real.
Bam. There you go. All right. That is going to do it for us. Rob, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, I think you just told them where they can find you.
Anyway, yeah, look for Rob is Creeping It Real. I think the only thing that isn't under that is my Snapchat. And that's at a.minitrix. I think that's it. Or otherwise, I just gave you someone completely different Snapchat, but that's mine. I don't really use Snapchat all that much, but I use Instagram a lot. So check me out on Instagram at Rob is Creeping It Real. I do want to make a YouTube video on my Borneos. I just have been slammed for time the last couple weeks. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm going to try and do that at some point. Yeah. So Jeremy, if people want to find out more about you, where are they going to go?
You can find me not everywhere on the internet, but you can find me at Brassman Reptiles. Obviously, you're here on YouTube. Amazing people here at Brassman Reptiles. Instagram at Brassman Reptiles. Twitter at Brassman Rep. I'm trying to get better on Twitter. I've been doing a little better on Twitter recently. And Morph Market as well, if anybody wants to. Shamball Python, are starting to go up here, right at Brassman Reptiles. And yeah, that's that.
That'll do it. So hopefully we'll tune in next time to see y'all. Like we said, if you are watching live on YouTube, on the Brassman Reptiles YouTube channel, you'll be able to check out another episode tomorrow. If you're listening on any other platform, you'll catch this following episode next week. And then we'll be recording another episode on Friday on YouTube. So you can tune in. It's actually going to be earlier in the day. It's going to be about 4 p.m. On Friday. So we'll be recording on Friday as well for another live episode on the Brassman Reptiles YouTube channel. But that will go up in 2 weeks on all other platforms.
Bam. There you go.
We'll catch you next time.
You've got it. See ya.
Boom.